Hello everyone, welcome to PlatformCon 2026. This is Ipuvi Mishra, Associate Engineering Manager at MIQ. Today I have Adnan Sait, my colleague, a UI technical lead from MIQ. Together we would be walking you all through how we did the setup of distributed observability for our micro-frontend using Sentry. Before jumping into the topic of today, I would like to take you all through this slide. Who are we? We are MIQ. We are a leading programmatic media partner. We are into this business from past 15 years. We work with multiple agencies and marketers to deliver better connected marketing. We are present in close to 13 countries with over 1,100 plus global employees. We have transacted over 100 billion plus impressions and have worked with 10,000 plus advertisers. You must be wondering what these programmatic media partners do. We work in the space of programmatic media advertising. What is programmatic media advertising now? So programmatic media advertising uses softwares to buy digital ad spaces in real time in order to connect the advertiser with a specific consumer. We make sure right advertisers meet the right consumers. To put it in simple words, you might have noticed that you just search for a phone of a specific brand and you start seeing the ads all around, be it on YouTube, on your social media account, or on any website you might have visited. What happens is there are multiple agencies, just like MIQ, who work on pre-campaign analysis to help out your advertisers to figure out who their direct consumers are or their targeted audiences are. Once this pre-campaign analysis is done, whenever a user visits a website, an ad slot gets generated. And this ad slot is published to the ad marketplace. Now, what happens at ad marketplace is a real-time auction. All of this is happening right before your website loads. So maybe less than 0.1 seconds. So during this real-time auctioning, everyone, all the advertisers would be bidding for you for that particular ad slot. Whoever wins the bid gets that particular ad slot and gets the opportunity to show their ad. All of this is done using 20 terabytes of data which is generated on a daily basis. And there are close to 40 billion plus ad spaces that gets traded on a daily basis. That's a brief about our business or what MIQ does. Now let's look at how we do this. Now we have one platform. MIQ runs a single UI called MIQ Sigma that serves everyone, our own employee, our external clients and traders. So this particular platform is the interface where they create the sales pitch, monitor live campaigns, and review post-campaign insights. This one single app serves all of their use cases. Now, the moment this kind of use cases comes, a single code base becomes a bottleneck. We had over 10 plus engineering teams, and we can't ask them to wait for each other for a single release. That's something not really viable. The answer for this was to give team full autonomy, their own code base, their own release lifecycle. And that's what we wanted to drive as organization. That was not something we took as a technology preference. That was a necessity for MIQ as an organization. The result of it, we have close to 20 plus independent micro-frontends deployed at MIQ, which are operated by 10 plus teams, where we are doing 250 plus UI releases on every month basis. So that's about our product. Now let's talk about the usage. Now we have 10,000 plus users spread across 13 plus countries. Now we don't know how this platform is performing on their real devices. We do have metrics that were giving us like what exactly users are experiencing or what is something going wrong. But we were not getting the right data when it comes to their actual experience, like where exactly something could have gone wrong. That's where we made a call to invest in real user monitoring. That's why we ended up setting up real user monitoring. There were three main reasons why we wanted to set this up. First one being we wanted to know real device performances. We wanted to get the signals from actual hardwares, not the synthetic benchmarks. Second one, we wanted to capture full session to know exactly what a user is doing and where exactly something is going wrong so that we could replicate similar things, make sure the production issues are replicated and root cause analysis have the right diagnosis. So that's where we ended up setting the real user monitoring for this particular platform. All right, now we have the monitoring setup. Obviously, we'll be getting some signals. So this is how the numbers look like. The signals were there and they were pretty uncomfortable. We had around 1200 active errors in the system and none of them had a owner. The resolution rate was somewhere around 10%. That meant 9 out of every 10 error types had never been actioned upon. We had around 85% of the errors that were being caught by the global error handler. These numbers were not accidental. They were direct consequences of how our observability ecosystem was architected. This is where there was a need to fix it. Now I'll hand it over to Adnan, who'll walk us through exactly why and how we fixed it. Over to you, Adnan.
The numbers that we just saw were concerning. The general feedback that we had got from developers was that the rump solution was very valuable for them, that it was allowing them to replicate errors and to find the root cause of errors that previously was very challenging. But the proactive resolution of this was missing. The numbers were telling a different tale. Looking into the system, one thing was clear. It was not a people problem or a behavior problem, it was a technical gap that existed. The developers simply did not know which errors belong to the application. This was because our observability was built to support a single monolithic application. It was not meant to give identity to 20 or more micro-frontends. The biggest gap that we had was lack of attribution. The developers simply did not know where an error was coming from. All the errors came into a single bucket, and they had some general discriminators like the page title, page URL, the timestamp. But this was not sufficient to find out which app it was coming from, because we could have four or more micro frontends running on the same URL. There were also some concerns around the SDK setup. The SDK was only initialized in the host app, which means that the shell app were not able to surface any kind of handled errors back to Sentry, and neither were they able to bring their own source maps in. The lack of standardization also meant that we were not able to rely on data that we were getting in logs and traces. This was because each team had different logging practices. Some of them used console.error for reporting errors, where some of them did console.log. And within the log, also, all of these strings were varying extensively, which meant that getting a standard across all of these and searching across logs was also made challenging because of this. Some of them were just missing framework guidance. For example, standardization was something that we could build a guidance for, but some of them were deeply nested within our UI framework pattern that we had. Now, the lack of attribution was not a choice that we made in observability, but something that surfaced out of our UI platform choice. Now, when you're thinking about building a UI application, the way that it starts off is always as a monolithic application. You have a single code base with a lot of different pages. Over here, any kind of error reporting that happens needs to have only one identity. It can be found out, or you can narrow down where that error came from based on the page, based on the stack trace that you get. But as your application scales, you would want to start thinking about micro frontends, because you will have overlapping releases, multiple development happening. The other side of the spectrum that gives you the largest number of autonomy, the greatest isolation between apps, is a framework like iframes. An iframe allows you to have your app as a separate code base, have it run separately, and be injected into an isolated runtime, that is your iframe window. Iframes are good in this way because whatever happens in that window belongs to that particular app. It has some drawbacks, that you have limited context sharing, limited theme sharing. Everything within that iframe is self-contained. We had to go with a middle ground because we did want active memory sharing, optimized dependency usage. So we went with module federation. Module federation uses runtime composition, which meant that your shell app is loaded first, and the shell app then loads one of the micro frontends at the time, and it only loads the asset files from the micro frontend. So it loads the JS and CSS and runs it as a script on the browser. The common factor is that the same browser window is used for all the shell and the micro frontend apps, and they use the same browser APIs. Now, this dilutes the error boundaries. When a micro frontend makes a fetch call or does a console log, you have lost its identity because these browser APIs do not surface the initiator details. Now, this is a behavior of module federation. It's something that's baked into the system. But this introduced complexity for us. We no longer knew where these requests were being made from, who was logging this, or where particular errors were coming from. The fix was very clear. We had to reintroduce this boundary, but without breaking the underlying architecture of module federation. What we did for this was to first separate the responsibility of the host app and the micro frontends. The host app would take care of initializing the observability SDK and setting the global configuration, the sampling rate, user details, all of that, PII scrubbing. Each of the module federation or the micro frontends were responsible for their own app. They had to be responsible about scoping all of the traces, errors, and logs that they had, proper error tracking practices, and also updating the source maps back into Sentry. Whenever the source maps were being generated, some metadata would get injected into the bundle and into the source map that would allow us to tag both of these together. We made a deliberate choice to have a single Sentry project. So all of the data flowed into a single project so that we can have a unified view of what is happening. But we were able to filter it by a tag of MFE name, micro frontend name. So this gave us the best of both worlds where we had isolation using MFE name and also had a unified platform using the single project. Now, this reintroduction of attribution has paid a massive dividends for us. We saw that at the current moment, the error attribution is at 80%, a massive win for us. This brought significant downstream impact. The error resolution rate jumped 6x and went to 60%. We also saw that detection and tracing of errors became very easy because the respective team could be alerted whenever their app had any kind of issues. One more accountability perspective that we saw developing was that the teams were starting to tag their own handled errors a lot more. They were starting to build fallbacks even for the unhandled errors, ensuring that they capture it and they handle it on their end. The performance improvement or the tagging improvement was from 15% to 40%. Only about 60% is still something that's handled globally by the global handler. All of these wins have been major for us, but there are some trade offs that still exist simply because of the architecture. The still big one still remains attribution. Although we did say that we were able to get 100% attribution on errors, traces and logs are a little more nuanced. Any kind of traces or logs generated by third party applications are not scoped. This is because we do not change their source code and add that tagging explicitly. There's also big dependency on how the micro frontend set up observability. For example, if a micro frontend does not set up the SDK or the bundle for error tracking, this means that the errors that come in the system will get unattributed, or even worse, can be attributed back to the shell. So, because of the shared runtime, there was a risk of one micro frontend impacting another or the host application. This is something that we did want to bridge. So, our next step is that we will introduce a CI gate for attribution as well. We will ensure that any kind of application that plugs into our UI platform has its own error attribution setup. Traces and logs, like I said, is more nuanced. We also want to drive a little bit more ownership and try reducing the unhandled errors from 60% to 20%. This would mean that the teams are more aware of what are the failure points and are handling it themselves because they are the ones who are most informed to show a better fallback to the user. We also have a vision of transforming the observability system into a telemetry system where we are able to track how user is performing across workflows, how much time it takes for them to log in, to make a search, and to take an action. Overall, we are very confident about the platform that we've reached. We've come to a place where we finally built a system that works as a real user monitoring for micro frontends. We've had to change the way that we think about micro frontends over this evolutionary process. But one thing that stuck with us and that we've learned is that attribution is key. That in a distributed system that has a shared runtime like module federation, to set up this attribution, you need to think deliberately about your architecture, the trade offs that you have, and work around those to bring back that attribution. Hope our learning helps you out. And anytime you work with UI apps or micro front ends, you think about the approaches that we had to take here. Thank you.